Thanks for being with me today. I've been talking with my coach about waiting on the Lord, and we specifically were talking today about what it looks like when you look at somebody else waiting versus your own waiting, and what I'm learning through that process. Thanks so much, and catch you on the other side.
Yeah, that's all right. So we're talking about waiting on the Lord a little bit. I mean, that's sort of been a theme here for a little while, and I think, gosh, we could write books and talk about that for ages probably, because it's, I think waiting on the Lord is an evolving experience,
Yes,
you
it
know.
is. It is.
But I'm interested in where you're at right now with that, because it seems like you have some thoughts or some things you're working through on that right now.
One of the nuggets that I had this last week is that I've been talking about kind of how I work through my processes when I have an obstacle or a issue that I'm working through, and I'm getting all worked up about it. But then what I found this last week, I was watching somebody else who was going through a different obstacle, and I watched him get a little worked up on this, and it started out as something that, yeah, the Lord's in control, and he's going to take you through this. But I just started watching him lose his peace, and it kind of became, not, I wouldn't say all encompassing, but definitely he was worried and anxious, and I was thinking to myself, why are you getting worked up about this? It was a work issue, and you're still going to get to go to work. You go to work at 9, you go home at 5, you pick up your paycheck, and you get to live the rest of your life. So why does that bother you so much? And then I realized that it doesn't really matter why it bothers him so much. That's what bothers him. And this is what bothers me. And just because he gets paid, and, obviously in real estate, I have a commission based business. And so when things don't happen the way I expect them to, that's where my worry kicks in. Even though I have that history of the Lord working through my situations and providing for me, and I've never, my kids have never missed a meal. I've always been able to get to where I need to go. The lights have not been turned off, and we got through all that. And then we've also had some amazing times of prosperity. So why do I get worked up when I know that ultimately it's going to work out?
It seems like that's one of the things that, I mean, I don't know how many times in my life where, where I've wanted something and it either isn't here yet, or whether it's a pay raise, or a certain number of clients, or but whatever, right? And I think
Right.
we have this ongoing like bump up against reality, like, uh, actually maybe it's in the unmet expectation. Like we have an expectation of something, and when that doesn't happen, we get frustrated, and then maybe our first response is to go to, you know, where's my stuff, or why don't I have this yet, or oh, what am I, or panic sets in. We're like, what am I going to do next?
Right. Right.
Even though history would suggest that we've always been provided for, taken care of.
Right. Right. So why is my first response to get either anxious or cranky, or behave not out of my the better habits that I have? And so it's kind of linked a little bit, as far as, we look at other people's lives, and we look at what's happening, and we judge them by what goes on inside in our own hearts. And so it's kind of a little bit of judgmental. Gee, I'm better than you because I don't have that worry, or I don't succumb to that worry. But then that person's going to look back at me and go, well, I'm better than you, better than me, because I don't have that worry. And it kind of sets ourselves up. And so if I realize that, then I can go, okay, you know what? We are all just walking through life, and doing absolutely the best we can right now.
I think it's one of the challenges with, sort of external benchmarks of like how we measure our faith. Like, like we look at other people's results, and then we sort of set that as a benchmark of some level of faith, and we go, oh, well, that's what that's supposed to look like, and if I had the right faith, it would look like that too.
Right.
But I don't have that, so then I must not be as spiritual, or I must not be there yet in my walk with God, or
Mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
The comparison game's a real trap, I
Right.
think.
I think, yeah, that comparison game, whatever level that it's on, whether it's looking at other people's stuff, whether it's looking at other people's faith, whether it's looking at other people's careers or their families, once you start comparing, it really can be a, a trap and a temptation to either feel better than or even worse than. And so, as opposed to, okay, God, I know you're here with me right now. Where would you like me to be right now? And that's more important. The one thing that I did that I want to say though that this was actually good for me is because when this other person came back to me said, "Why are you so concerned?" as opposed to taking your walk with your faith walk with God, knowing that He's walking you through this and He's with you and it allowed me to realize that, looking in, if I could separate myself, not so much to look into somebody else's life, but if I could separate myself emotionally from looking when I'm looking into my life, I can take away that emotional response and I can look a little bit more objectively, both at my present and compare it to my own history. And then I can go, oh, that's right. God does take care of me. Oh, that's right. When I just do what he's asking me to do right now, there is a provision. Oh, that's right. When I respond to somebody in a loving, caring, professional way, I do get a response that ultimately works out to my own good and sometimes even better than what I was hoping for. And so it's that comparison really of my own world, but just without the emotion of my own world. Does that make sense?
It does. And the trap is, I mean, it'd be easy to say like, well, yeah, I mean, of course, Sandy, you're supposed to just say like, oh, of course I know God's going to provide for me, but it's more than the cerebral acknowledgement that God provides. It's actually going back through your memory banks and remembering and feeling the experience of being provided for. Because I think that's when you talk about peace that transcends understanding, that's an experience. It's not a knowledge. It's not like a cerebral, like God, the peace that surpasses all understanding. It has to be felt. You have to feel that in order
Right.
to really, I think, let it sink in.
And I think you're right that having that memory, because your mind doesn't, anytime you relive something in your memory, your mind doesn't know necessarily whether it's a new memory or an old memory. And so it relives those emotions. If I can look back on the times when I've been provided for, relive that memory, and that strengthens that emotional response going, oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. I'm going to be cared for.
I think that's the thing about abiding. Like when you look at abiding, it's, you abide in me as I abide in my Father. Like
Right.
when you can,
That's
I
good.
think that is an experiential thing. I think to abide in Christ is an experiential thing.
Mm-hmm.
And and experiences, I think, are on the emotional feeling level. Experiences are not on a cerebral level.
That's correct.
So this is where I think a lot of people um, in their spiritual lives really wrestle with making spirituality fit for them. Like, oh, we all say it's a personal relationship, and isn't that great? But then the disconnect and the reasons why we have the experiences like you just said, where it was like I look at other people and I wonder like why is it good for them, and yet
Right.
I don't have what I need yet.
Right.
We have this disconnect because we're trying to like make it all make sense cerebrally, like cognitively, rather than going to the experiential place where, oh, I know what it feels like to be provided for. And in this moment, I'm abiding in that feeling because that
Right.
is
That's
the
good. I like
experience
that.
that I think God's talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense, or am I rambling
No,
now?
actually, I like that. That just kind of sunk in a little bit, and I can feel that percolating in there because it's the okay. What I need to live in and abide in right now is that feeling of that memory of being provided for, and just wipe out the current whatever it is that I'm looking at, and just think about okay, this is how God provides for me. Remember, a lot of times, the God would tell his people, remember when I brought you out of the wilderness. Remember when. And just how cool to be able to take that go, remember when I brought you out of the wilderness of 2007 and 2008, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
That's
certainly
awesome.
not that bad. And yet you're here and you're better off and life is great. So it's good.
No,
No,
that's
that's
really
really
good.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because, and I think the piece of that too, I'm probably now over punctuating this point, but the whole thing about like it's not remembering mentally remembering like,
No,
right, but
that's a
it's
good
getting
point.
to the spot where you can feel what that was like in that moment.
Right. Right.
And I think it's in those spaces where um, we're really connected to our source. We're really connected to God, as in those moments when we're present to and feeling those memories of when He brought us out of the desert, the wilderness, our dark night of the soul, whatever,
Right.
whenever we were provided for.
That's excellent.
Have you ever had those moments where like you're driving down the road and you hear a song and then like a thought sparks and you just your eyes well up with tears and you just feel this connection? Have you ever had that?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking you were going to say, remember, and you know how it takes you back and you're no longer in the car driving, you're somewhere else and thinking about something else and
Yeah.
you're in that. That's
Right.
what I was, yeah, definitely,
Same thing. Yeah. Right.
definitely there.
It's connection.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if we all started to have that type of a relationship with God, and it was less of a looking externally for benchmarks and points of validation of am I doing this right or am I on the right path, but we went inward to who we knew God to be for us and we held on tight to that, then I think the trust is the peace. Let's just not even say that it's peace, right? It's at the end of the day we want to be at peace with where we are in our life and what we're up to and all that stuff. And peace is a feeling, and I think peace only comes from when you're abiding in that
Right. When
experience that
in
God
that
provides.
experience, when I know that I definitely have more peace when I have an understanding, and not only in my head but in my heart, that all will be well. When I get it, and the only way I get it is by being right there with him. So good.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
thank
that's
you,
good.
Chris. That's awesome, and actually that added a little extra to what we were talking about today, because that gives me another little tool as well to use when I do feel like I'm forgetting to be in that memory, that emotional moment with the Lord. So that's cool. So I hope this talk gave you one or two more tools that you know you can have peace in the middle of whatever circumstance you're in. That's what I pray for you, is to know that this is a journey for all of us. No one of us is better than the other, and we all get to come to those crossroads where we get to have a choice in a way that we actually can create the peace and the vision for what we have for our lives, and actually for what God has for our lives. So thanks so much for joining me. I'm so looking forward to next time.